afternoon or good evening, depending on the time zone. So, good afternoon for Lamia. How are you doing? This is Dr. Moby with Lifestyle TV. Let's welcome Lamia.
Hi, Dr. Moby. Thank you so much. Good evening. Yeah, it's actually 5 p.m. here. I don't know. It might be 6 p.m. for you, but we are an hour behind.
Okay, no problem, no problem. And just for audience sake, I just want to emphasize she is very well experienced. We are so lucky she's joining our show today. Lamia Zia, she's professor at Texas Tech University, and let's hear from her experience a little bit.
So,
Lamia,
let me introduce myself. I'm Lamia, and I was born in Lahore, and I was raised in Islamabad because my father was working with the government. So most of my time actually spent in Islamabad, and I did my master's from Punjab University. I don't
mhm.
have to go into the detail what I have done because I think it would be kind of like my 15 or 16-page CV. So I just want to make it very brief.
Yeah.
I did my master's from Punjab University and traveled all around the world because I was a journalist. I worked in Pakistan. I started my career from Daily The Nation newspaper, and then also worked with Dawn News and also worked with Geo English News. And then after almost like 5 or 6, 7 years spending my life as a journalist in Pakistan, I moved to the United States, and I did my master's from University of Iowa in multimedia journalism. And from there, I actually moved to UT Tyler, and from UT Tyler, I did my third master's in politics and government. And now I'm here in Texas Tech University. It's almost like 4 years. I joined academia, so from journalism and teaching. I think it's a great experience. I think I really did enjoy my journalism life as well.
Mhm.
And now I think it's more kind of like satisfaction for me when I go and teach my 400 students. So I think I'm making a difference. I mean, yeah. And I'm also doing my PhD. I'm teaching full time 3 classes at Texas Tech University at the College of Media and Communication. And I'm also doing my PhD in international communication.
Yes, and she's. I'm so fortunate. She's so experienced, and whenever we meet such high intellectual people, we like to learn from them. And so, tell me, Lamia, what is your inspiration? Why did you choose journalism?
Okay. Actually, my father was in the government, and he really wanted me to join the government. He wanted me to do CSS, Dr. Movie. I think it's everyone's dreams when you grow up in a kind of like a civil service background or a home. But I was like more. I'm a person that I don't think so. I can really, follow. I mean, when I cook something, I bake something. For me, it's the biggest, hardest part is to follow the instructions. So when I told my father that I'm not that kind of a person of my own thing, so my father's like, "Oh no, in government you really have to follow. You have to really obey." So I think, Lamia, you better do kind of like some creative work, some artwork. So I thought like, okay, how about like writing stories? And because I'm a very good listener, I'll listen to people's stories. So I thought like, okay, I think I can do journalism. So after my master's from Punjab University in journalism, I went back to Islamabad, and from there I started my career. I think that my inspiration was that I really wanted to do something different because my mother was a household person, so I see my father always working outside,
Mm.
and I was kind of like, no, I don't think so. I am a person to be staying at home. So I thought, like, let's Lamia do something different. So I joined journalism, and it was 2003. It was soon after my master's from Punjab University. I joined a newspaper where I was the only. I mean, that's a kind of a surprising when I tell my students that I was the only one female journalist among. We have a newsroom of I think 17, 18 journalists, reporters. In Daily Nation, it was back in 2003. Now I'm pretty sure that there must be a lot of women reporters. But
Mm.
back in 2003, when I joined, I remember my editor asked me, Lamia, you really want to join this newsroom? Because, just go and take a look and
Mm.
come back and then let me know if you really want to join journalism. So actually, when I went, it was kind of like very, very noisy and all kind of like, men, and they were talking. And I was looking at the newsroom. I was like, oh, it's a challenge, and I love challenges.
Hmm.
So I got back to my editor's room and I said, like, I'm ready. I'm ready to take this challenge. So I was the only one female, like, woman reporter among that 18 men in that newsroom.
Oh my
But
God.
but I made it. I did it.
Oh, wow. We are so proud of this. Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I know, we know that in Pakistan it's a boys' club, I guess, and even here, So journalism, I think. So what do you see difference between here and in Pakistan?
Uh, if I like look at from my journalism lens, I would say in Pakistan it's more challenging, Dr. Mobi. Particularly, working as a woman journalist in Pakistan, it's I think your challenge is kind of like double because as a reporter, as a journalist, you have to go everywhere. I mean, you have to walk down the streets.
Mm.
So, I mean, working as a journalist back in 2003, I don't know, I mean, now what is the situation back in Pakistan, working as a journalist. But I think when I did journalism, I remember it took some time. I mean, it took some time to make my space, to make my place among that male dominated kind of a journalism. And I still remember that it took some time to actually start appearing on the front pages of the newspaper.
Mm.
So for me, it's kind of like when I joined journalism. Um, so I remember like my editor said, my chief reporter said, "Oh, because I mean, you're a woman, so why don't you do some kind of like soft beats?" So soft beat means like women, children, education,
Mm.
and some kind of like a city news beats. And I was like, I want to do something different. And I said like, how about if I cover Senate and Parliament? And they said, no, I mean, you should do like city news reporting. So this
Mm.
is the kind of like challenge that I found that I think, and I mean, working in that kind of like environment where you don't have this kind of a safety and security. So I think it's a different environment. I would say that it's
Mm.
not it wasn't easy. I would say.
Okay. And so also tell me a little bit about, nowadays we see journalism is, at least in some of these, is very sensational. So they just create like, storm in a teacup, kind of. And they try to stay away from actual facts, and then they just keep on, saying same thing again and again and again and spinning, spinning, spinning. So, I mean, is it a good journalism, or journalism is like, you have to give facts and then basically let people make the decision?
It's a very good question, Dr. Mobi, and I would say we really lack journalistic trainings in Pakistan
Mm.
that could actually teach us about this journalism ethics.
Mm.
Whatever we learn, we go to our educational institutions that actually just teach us in Pakistan about media theories.
Mm.
But like here we have an institute like Pointer.
Mm.
See, so you can just go and they train you. Just they just kind of like give you fellowships, and you can just kind of like get a month training, 2 week training, or 3 weeks training. So
Mm.
we don't have this kind of like institutions in Pakistan that could actually give this kind of a training to
Mm.
journalists.
Mm. So what you're saying is, beside Punjab University, there's no. I know in mass communication, there's a good mass communication. I remember. I think the director was one of our family friend, so I knew he was at mass communication department head of that. So, but beside that, there are not too many universities teaching mass
So
communication.
we have Punjab University. I don't think so. We have media department in Qadi Azam University because that's why I went to Lahore because Qadi Azam University did not have the media department. So I think the College of Media and Communication, Punjab University had very good professors when I was there. I
Mm.
know Dr. A.R. Khalid was there, Dr. Muhizuddin, who just recently passed away. He was actually there, and we have Dr. Shafiq Jalandhari. These were the people over there that kind of like played as a mentors for me. But
Mm.
other than that, I don't know whether we have institutions like Pointer or I know like IBA journalism, Karachi, they are kind of like having some kind of collaborations with our institutes here in the US with our but I think that's IBA in Karachi. I don't know anything about what's happening in Islamabad or some other parts of Pakistan.
Mm. And I saw you wrote actually great articles, and I saw some of them very, very important. Some was more about, position of in politics. And so tell me a little bit, what was the inspiration behind those articles?
So that was actually my research article that I did with my professor back when I was doing my master's at politics and government back at UT Tyler. So Dr. Sturken was a kind of like a motivation behind that. So he said, Lamia, I know like Pakistan had the first woman prime minister.
Mm,
So what about like, what is the representation of women parliamentarians in Pakistan? And I know that that's a very great, that could be a really great research study. So me and Dr. Sturken, we both kind of like, did a study on the role of women parliamentarians in Pakistan. So like, and we kind of like compared with the South Asia. Like
mhm.
what is the representation of women in the parliament in Bangladesh and different countries? And luckily our study got published in Journal of Punjab University. I think it was few years back actually we did that.
Mm,
And we kind of like compared different kinds of decades. So when we have Benazir Bhutto,
mm,
what actually she had done for the women in Pakistan. So what are kind of like laws like domestic violence and laws on dowry. So we were kind of like comparing like what happened in Benazir era, what happened in Pervez Musharraf era. So we were kind of looking at that legislations that is kind of like a favorable to women.
mm.
That was a great study that we did a few years ago.
Hmm. And I remember Asma Jangir, in Benazir's time, she was very vocal, and problem was, the religious factors, they were really not giving enough space for them to even speak. So there was a lot of issues which I saw. They were trying to harass, and, they were trying to say things which were not even relevant.
So
Totally irrelevant.
So I think working as a journalist, Dr. Moby, what I kind of like observed and found that we have laws, we have legislations, we have laws, against dowry, we have laws against domestic violence, we have like tons of laws. But the
Mm,
thing is like the implementation of these laws are very weak. So, for example, when I was working as a journalist, I used to go to the women crisis center every day, and every day there are like stories about domestic violence, about a man beating a woman, about like very sad stories. So every day, like my morning was starting with the crisis center, and I was going to the women crisis center, and there were like women running away from their homes. There were women kind of like their husbands were abusive. So I was like looking at these kind of like stories, and I was just thinking that we have laws, but then the implementation is very weak because most of the stories that I was covering and I was listening to the women, they were like, they can't go to the police stations. They are kind of running away because of their husbands are falling, or their husbands will snatch their kids. So these are kind of like a fears that those women had. They had like no education, so where they would go.
mm. And it's very interesting. It's cross-cultural thing. Even here, I had a guest actually, two guests before, and she was a domestic violence survivor, and she shared with me that she was, of course, she was married, but husband was, you can unfortunately still there's a domestic violence and then rape even with your wife. It's because you have to have permission and all those. So she said she filed a complaint and she went to the county. It was in Midwest area in U.S. And she filed a complaint, and that was she was saying that all the police officers over there were boys club, and they said, "Oh, you are a property of your husband. Why are you complaining?"
It
That
It
is.
actually reminded me, Dr. Moby, I did a project. It was a multimedia project, and it has like different kinds of stories of women. I did as a part of my master's back at University of Iowa, and I
Mm,
went to different kinds of shelters.
Hmm.
And I was in Iowa City, and I remember I drove 3 hours to Chicago. There was some kind, I don't remember the shelter name, but it was running by some Pakistani.
Hmm.
So I kind of like, I mean, you have to take a lot of permission because, because of security and safety of women, you
Hmm.
really can't, get inside the shelter because, I mean, if you don't have any permission or a legal thing. So I
Hmm.
remember that, I took a lot, permission, and I waited along until they just kind of like, approve,
Hmm.
because, I was doing a project for University of Iowa, and I went inside and I interviewed women. I had like, audio war stories, I have video stories, and you are right, it's kind of like cross cultural. But what I found that I think in a developing world we don't have a system. So for example, if a woman, I mean, she has no idea if she's kind of like a victim of domestic violence, whom to call. Here women know they are going to call 911, right?
Yeah.
But and that's again, it's the first generation kind of like immigrants, the second generations are more kind of aware. But
Hmm.
back in Pakistan, the women have like, they have no idea, I mean, where to go. That is the thing.
Yeah, and but here was also surprised that she told me that she was in Midwest and Chicago area, and she said she went to the county and she did not know where to go. So it is more actually more common in metro areas. They are well knowledgeable and everything, but in small suburbs is still a problem even in US. So they have then I told her same thing. I said it's nothing to do with any race culture. I think it has a lot to do with
Yeah.
just how they are kind of lack of education and rights and everything. I mean, as a person you cannot abuse any pets, humans or anyone. I mean, that's period. That's certain people abuse pets, and certain would do man, female, anyone. I mean, there are limits. There is a boundary for love, and then after that there is abuse, right? So then you have to be very clear, very vocal, and I think more we talk about, more we actually discuss where are the lines. So she said the police officer told her, "You're property of your husband." So if he had, attempted rape or whatever, then it was okay. So would not file a complaint. Then she moved out of that area and she came to Northeast, filed a complaint then. Then she got the protection order. That's how bad it. So and she still gets harassment from. So I said, wow, I'm so sorry. I said, but it takes a lot of your courage to speak up and share that story. And so I was also reading article that even for rape cases, there are not many examiners. So even if, let's say, if somebody comes and say, "Oh, I was raped," they won't do even your exam. So even here, we say, well, it's supposed to be better, right? So, but even here, so imagine what would happen in our country. It's,
Yeah.
it'd be like it's like unheard. And even here, if somebody files that kind of complaint, and then their career is totally ruined because nobody will give you job or something. Somehow people retaliate again, which is sad, which is very very sad. So there is something to be said about on those lines. So, anyways, that's a very important topic, and we like to always highlight whenever we have somebody, especially has worked on that. But I also noticed that you have great interest in studying cultures and food. So tell me,
That's actually, Dr. Mummy, that's my favorite topic to talk about. I mean, I can spend all day talking about food.
I know. So tell me, how would we say it's the culture influence the food, or vice versa?
So
Which
Dr. Mummy, before I talk about actually food, I want to show you that
oh,
I have a Pakistani mithai. So actually,
thank you, thank you,
and
thank you
actually
very much.
my friend, she brought me all the way from Pakistan.
Oh. I know.
I know you won't appreciate Dr. Moby. I remember my last talk with you, like our last meeting with you, and like you gave us a long lecture about not to consume sweets. And Rolf was telling me that okay, now you are going to have this mithai in front of Dr. Moby. So just
No, actually, I like if people do that because that's the reality is that I want, kind of real life. I never say don't consume. I say consume, but just stop. You should know the limit. Okay.
yeah.
So, like the sweets have a limit. So, yes, I tasted. Yes, yes, absolutely. If I wouldn't taste these when you put it in front of me, I wish you were near me. I would have tasted it, but I would not fill my stomach. That's the only difference.
So I mean, talking about food, Dr. Moby, I had a very rudimentary knowledge growing up in Pakistan about like the meanings behind this food, like the cultural meaning behind the food. Because I know like Ramadan and Eid, every time we have been kind of like eating, and that's the culture of eating in Pakistan. That whenever you go and I mean visit Pakistan, that's what you do. Like get-togethers.
Oh, I think yes, we lost you. Go ahead.
We are back.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I mean that's the thing that we always talk about food, but I kind of like learn the meaning, the cultural meaning behind food when I kind of like started traveling, Dr. Momi.
Mm,
I started traveling when I was a journalist, and I got a chance to see different cultures.
mm,
And I tried sushi in Japan, and I tried dosa in Sri Lanka, and then in London, definitely there was fish burgers. But I remember when I was doing internship I mean, at Pakistan Embassy in Washington D.C. It was like I think 2012 as part of my master's at the University of Iowa. So I was a cultural intern, and what happened? I know I'm very foodie. So what happened one day? I was walking in the corridor of our Pakistan Embassy in Washington D.C. And what happened that I kind of like the entire corridor was had a like a smell, very strong smell, like a very strong flavor of mangoes. And I kind of like a cat started following that kind of a fragrance. And I kind of like when I reached at a I think it was cultural ambassador's office or somewhere, and I saw like the big boxes of mangoes, and I was like, oh wow, like the real Pakistani mangoes are here. So then the officer told me this is actually they have it every year in the summer season to give it to the dignitaries. And I started thinking, wow, it's I mean we just look at the food like just just we are eating because we're hungry, but I think it has more meaning. I think it's a kind of like a connection. So I started looking at the food as a kind of like a lens to communicate, to create bridges, to
mm,
create connections. So what happened when I actually got a job here at Texas Tech University? I mean, I'm lucky that I'm teaching that class, communicating in a global society, where actually I'm trying to connect my students to
mm.
different cultures through arts, music, and food. So food is a kind of like a main component in my course when I teach students, and I tell them that you can definitely learn all about these theories. But I think if you want to really experience something, so try to learn this communication. Like food is an art. It's a kind of like communication.
Mm.
So I give them assignments. I tell my students to go to different ethnic restaurants. We don't have much ethnic restaurants here in Lubbock, but we have like few Mediterranean. So I sent my students to these ethnic restaurants, and I asked them to spend some time and to see kind of like how they prepare food, how they serve food, what are the languages they are talking about, what are the kind of flavors in that restaurant. And my students, they totally fall in love with that assignment, Dr. Movi. That's,
Mm.
I think, one of their favorite assignments, that they go to different ethnic restaurants. And when they come back, they have like a totally different perception about that culture.
And I think that speaks volume what you're telling. And by the way, for disclaimer, I love food. I'm sure you read my book. I used to fly to Chicago just to eat. Okay, so if you ask me all the restaurant in US, I can tell you every state good restaurant because I've been there. So that's how foodie. I told you. I think I was in Texas, San Antonio. And I told you we had I think 3 feet paratha.
Yes.
So, and I ate that whole thing. And I'm like this, but I ran after that 7 miles. So it's not that I don't eat, it's but I know how to balance it. That's all. Okay. So enjoy food. By the way, talking about mangoes, that's true. Actually, President Zia used to send mangoes to India and for actually diplomacy type, and the Indian ambassador used to also distribute to all the officials there because that was supposed to help to melt down some of the hostility between India and Pakistan. It works. Yes, it works. By the way, mangoes are the best. I mean, for mangoes, 2 years ago, I went to Toronto to eat, and you cannot. So I flew to Toronto to eat mango and came back. So the police officer, the custom border, asked me, oh, why did you come here? Why did you come back? What were you doing there? I said, "Ah, we went to eat mangoes." And he said, what? Crazy? Are you crazy? You flew to eat mangoes? I said, yeah, what is wrong with that? So, but I'm just telling you, I love food. Yeah. I love food. I think anyone who does not love food, I don't understand that. But remember, learn the art to when to stop. That's all.
I think food is. I think Doctor Moby, food is more like. I think more than survival. I think
Mm.
it's more like identity. So, for example, you said you used to fly to Toronto to get the mangoes. Why? Because it's a part of kind of like our culture. It's if you grew up in Pakistan, you would never say you don't like mangoes. I mean, I love mangoes.
Yeah,
I think I would do the same thing like as you did. I would definitely fly back to Pakistan to get the real mangoes. So I
yeah.
think it's part of identity.
Yeah, we had jamun, we had mangoes. I ate when we went there. I ate 10 mangoes one day, but I didn't eat whole day anything else but mangoes. So, but because I love them, so I said no. I have to eat them. No matter I can fast for next 2 days. That's fine, but I'm gonna eat that. So that is true. So you have to taste, and that's what exactly. I enjoy food. Yes, enjoy the different cultures. I mean, I love sushi. Absolutely, I've tried. I was sick many times with food poisoning because of eating raw food, but still love sushi. You ask me different cuisine. I love all Thai, of course, is easy, but Spanish, so name. I love. I mean, every week I go out to actually 4 different types of cuisine, but I still able to enjoy and keep myself healthy. That's the only part I learned with now experience is that you can still keep enjoying everything, but just know your limits. That's all.
Yeah, like your portions.
Yeah, just keep a proportion and then enjoy them. Because if you don't enjoy, then I am sure you love different varieties too, right?
You mentioned in your book you like I really love what I really love about your book is that you give the pictures like the visuals of chicken tikka and the bhindi, and you also took the pictures of like the portions, how much portion you really eat, and the chicken tikka was like oh my god, like that was really really good.
Fish over there, the fish in that book is Uzbek food. So they cook it on a clay oven. They whole trout and they bake it, and then it is amazing. So I think like the Uzbek food is Turkish food, Uzbek food. I mean, they are and also. So I think if we taste all this Lebanese food, I mean. It's amazing how they all have evolved and they all have their different names and so forth, but I think it's very similar in my opinion. I mean, a lot of it's very similar. They love meat, they love, carbs, they love sweet dessert. I'm sure you like baklava.
How really did you know baklava is actually my food? But since I read your book, I'm seriously kind of like just taking all of these things out of my favorite list.
No, no, you keep it. Never lose the favorite list. It's just know when to stop. That's all. Don't fill your stomach with it. That's the only message. Taste it, feel it, enjoy it, but never fill your stomach. That's the only. Okay, so with any food, with you never see the problem is whenever we try to fill things, the amount gets us. Is not about tasting it. Yes, absolutely taste it, enjoy it. I mean, do I have McDonald's fries? Absolutely. Me and my wife, we go and I have McDonald's fries and tea. Yes, absolutely. Because you know how tasty it is. It is very tasty. So yes, yes, absolutely. So I think stay healthy. But it's our duty to stay healthy. Mission health. I say we have a mission health. we don't. So that is important because if we don't, then you will be forced. As you know, with COVID, a lot of emphasis is on health because the complication rate was totally different. People who were healthy versus unhealthy. Even it stood for doctors. A lot of physicians actually they got really sick, really, really sick
Mm.
because they were not taking care of their health. So if you
Yeah.
see even a lot of doctors, they are way overweight, and then they will be, counseling others. But it's very hard to counsel somebody if you don't believe in yourself. I can tell you now, we are do this, do that, because I do this is what I practice. But I think it would be very hard to tell, and that other person will not listen because they say you don't do it yourself, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
No, you. I
I
mean,
see.
your book has a proof that
uh,
whatever you have kind of tell other people, you did it.
I'm still doing it. It not did one thing. I still do even today. Even today, even I still have my scale. I weigh my food. Every meal is calculated. Everything is calculated. I maintain my discipline perfectly. 4 years have passed, and I never ever gave up. Not even a 1 pound here and there because it needs dedication, commitment. But you need. Yeah, I mean that you once you see success, once you I think I was reading, and that's how the brain actually learns. If you do some baby steps and you have a success, automatically there's I mean, if somebody would have asked now 5 years ago, would you be able to do that? I said no, absolutely, it's very difficult, it's impossible, 0.1% chance. But look, I am here 5 years later, 4 or 5 years, and I'm teaching other people to do, because success was baby steps. I took baby steps, and they were so, and I had people encouraging me. So one thing I learned, which is I would like to share with everyone, is always encourage even small success. Because for me, 1 pound, 2 pound weight loss was because I felt I was encouraged by my trainer, and she was very nice lady, and she said yes, keep up. And although I wasn't following the instruction, but the success was there. That was is the key. Now the brain reacts very differently if there's somebody criticize and say, you do this, you do that wrong. I think it
Yeah,
takes
that's
it
right.
wrong meaning.
Yeah, and the thing is, as I remember, my last meeting with you, Dr. Mobi, as you said, I think food here, I think the industrialization and the industry has totally kind of changed the food. For example, I was watching a video by National Geographic photographer. So what he does, he goes to different parts of the world and he kind of photograph what people are eating,
Mhm.
and his show name is We Are What We Eat. So he
Mhm.
went to the northern areas of Pakistan, like Hunza Valley,
Mhm.
and he interviewed different people. He just went to different houses. He lived there for a month and he photographed what people were eating. And he was kind of very surprised because people were eating what they were growing in their backyard.
Oh wow,
So
that's
he just came back and he did a kind of a presentation, and I was showing it to my students in my class, and I was like, wow. So they were growing up with the nuts. So they were eating a lot of nuts by that northern part of Pakistan, northern areas in Pakistan. And in Hunza Valley, I think the apricot oil, they use a lot of apricot oil. So a lot of healthy things that they were kind of like, it's like they don't have any kind of like, processed food that they were eating. Like, all the cans, like you can get it from any store here in Walmart or Costco or anywhere. But the thing is like they were eating what they were kind of like growing in their backyard.
Hmm. Yeah, and that is so. Any final thoughts you have, Lamia, for my audience?
Uh, I will like say that if you really wanna learn about different kinds of cultures, traditions, and customs, because as a intercultural communication scholar or a professor that teaches that class, I can just only say that before you just look at that Hollywood stereotypical images about some cultures, I think it's kind of like my thought that it's better to just go spend some time with the people of that culture, eat their food, and then make that kind of judgments. So that's my only final thought.
That's a very strong statement and very very practical, because and people should just keep their ideas open. I personally have gone to Israeli restaurants too, and I've eaten their food just to learn how their food is different from Palestinians, or is it different. I mean, I personally go there, and I've gone to all different cultures, and I think that's what it is. Keep your ideas open, but connect with food first and see. Then you study that culture, and then you will find out there's love everywhere. But it's just we shouldn't close our eyes and ears for that. Well, thank you for coming to our show. It's been
Thank you.
pleasure. I love to have some time again, and we will discuss other topics. I know we talked a little bit about McDonaldization of food.
Oh, yeah, we haven't talked about that. Maybe in our next show we'll talk about it. I
Okay,
think
take
that's some
care.
good things
Thank
to talk
you.
about.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to our show. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.